Good afternoon, Standard 8 students. Now I shall be taking it from where, when we come to know Bassanio has already convinced Antonio that before they could deliver him to Shylock, he is willing to sacrifice his most precious gift, that's his wife, who is very precious to him. And even Graciano says, I wish my wife was dead. So now Shylock was getting impatient. He says, what are these two Christian people are fighting and talking about, and they're wasting time. So he cries out. Shylock now cried out impatiently. We trifle time, we are wasting a lot of time. I pray, pronounce the sentence. And now all was awful expectation in the court, and every heart was full of grief for Antonio. Now Antonio being a very respectable, kind-hearted, generous person, so everyone, those who were present in the court, they were feeling very sorry for Antonio, because now he's going to undergo a lot of pain. Okay. Portia asked if the scales were ready to weigh the flesh. And she said to the Jew, Shylock, you must have some surgeon by lest he bleed to death. So when they're getting ready to cut, so Portia asked Shylock if he had a surgeon, because while cutting the pound of flesh, he will bleed. And to take care of his wounds, a doctor should be available. Shylock, whose whole intent was that Antonio should bleed to death, said. Now, Shylock actually wanted Antonio to die. And he wanted him to die in this way. He should bleed to death. Said, it is not so named in the bond. Means it is not mentioned in the bond that I should keep a surgeon to see that he does not bleed to death. So he advises the counselor to please follow the exact wordings that are there in the bond. Okay. So now she has to follow. He said, okay, fine. Shylock would make was, I cannot find it, means he cannot find the wordings in the bond. Then said Portia, a pound of Antonio's flesh is thine, it is yours. The law allows it, and the court awards it. And you may cut this flesh from off his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it. Again, Shylock exclaimed, O wise and upright judge, a Daniel is come to judgment. And then he sharpened his long knife again, and looking eagerly on Antonio, he said, come, prepare. Now as Shylock was about to cut the pound of flesh, then Portia intervenes and says, tarry a little, Jew, which means wait a little. There is something else. There is something which I would like to remind you. This bond here gives you no drop of blood. The words expressed are a pound of flesh. So now she is reminding Shylock that you had told me to follow the exact wordings that are written in the forfeiture or in the bond. So now I am reminding you that over here there is no mention about that you are entitled for a drop of blood. What is written over here? That you are entitled for a pound of flesh. Now, if in the cutting of the pound of flesh you shed one drop of Christian blood, your land and goods are by the law to be confiscated to the state of Venice. Now, as it was utterly impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood, this wise discovery of Portia that it was flesh and not blood that was named in the bond saved the life of Antonio, and still admiring the wonderful sagacity of the young counselor who had so happily bought off this expedient, plaudits resounded from every part of the Senate house, and Gratiano exclaimed in the words which Shylock that had used, O wise and upright judge, mark, Jew, a Daniel is come to judgment. Now, this is the way how Portia saved Antonio's life. So when she very tactfully she asked him about, you should have had a surgeon to see that he does not bleed to death. So immediately Shylock reacted and said, no, no, no. It is not mentioned in the bond. Please follow the exact wordings of the bond. And because no way it is mentioned that I should keep a surgeon or a doctor to take care of his wound. So then she says, okay, fine. We shall follow the instructions that are given in the bond. So he says a pound of flesh of Antonio is to be cut off from his breast or nearest to his heart. So the law allows it, the court awards it. So then Shylock exclaimed with happiness that, O wise and upright judge, a Daniel is come for judgment. So now he was screaming out his lungs, saying this very loudly. So in one way he was praising the counselor, and then on the other hand he was actually tantalizing, teasing the other people who were in great support of Antonio. But when the table turned, when Portia, the counselor, very tactfully said, I will follow the exact wordings that are there in the bond. So in the bond, before you cut, let me remind you that there is something else. Over here, it is only mentioned that you are entitled for a pound of flesh. No way it is mentioned that you are entitled for a drop of blood. So now while cutting, you have to make sure that not a single drop of blood is to be shed. And if you do so, then your property will be confiscated. Confiscated means it will be taken away or snatched away. Because you have to take the pound of flesh and make sure that not a single drop of blood is to be shed or to be dropped. Because you are not entitled for a drop of blood. In this way, Shylock was stumped. He knew that now his dreams of causing harm to Antonio has been finished, has been destroyed. So now everyone that were present in the Senate House, in the Court of Justice, they were all very happy, very excited. They began to give a huge round of applause because at the beginning they were feeling very sorry for Antonio. Now that Antonio's life has been saved by this wise and tactful counselor, so they exclaimed their joy and happiness. So Gratiano, when he seen the way Shylock was tantalizing them, when the counselor was showing that he was in favor of Shylock. In the same words that Shylock used, Graciano also began to tease or to tantalize Shylock by saying, "O wise and upright judge, Daniel is come to judgment." Now he's making fun of Shylock and you paying him back with the same coin. The same words that Shylock had used, now Graciano is playing it on Shylock himself. Okay. Now Shylock, finding himself defeated in this cruel intent, said with a disappointed look that he would take the money, and Bassanio rejoiced beyond measures at Antonio's unexpected deliverance, cried out, "Here is the money." But Portia stopped him, saying softly, There is not, there is no haste. The Jew shall have nothing but the penalty. Therefore prepare, Shylock, to cut off the flesh, but mind you, shed no blood. No, do not cut off more, no less than just a pound. So now what happens when Shylock realized that he was losing the case? So very disappointingly he asked, then why don't you people give me my capital amount, money which I lent? Now before the case could take place, Portia had asked Shylock 3 times. They are offering you double the amount, take the money and I'll deface the bond. So Shylock did not budge, did not agree with what the counselors said. So 3 times in front of the whole court, he refused to accept the 3,000 ducats or the fine. They were willing to pay double or 6 times more, but he refused it. So now when he is demanding back for the 3,000 ducats, now she says, you are not supposed to take the money. The court and the law awards you the pound of flesh. So please go ahead and take your pound of flesh. But remember that you're not supposed to shed any drop of blood. And also you have to make sure that you cannot cut more than a pound or even less than a pound. In other words, you have to be so accurate in cutting and that too without shedding any blood. And you have to cut the exact weight. Now that is going to be very difficult for Shylock. Okay. So when he said, I want the money, then immediately Bassanio said, okay, here is the money. But Portia said not to give the money because he is not entitled. And he has to take the pound of flesh. And he has to remember that no drop of blood should be shed. And neither he could cut more nor less. All right. So now, Shylock to cut off the flesh. If the scale run but by the weight of a single hair, you are condemned by the law of Venice to die, and all your wealth is forfeited as or to the estate. So now remember, while cutting, if you drop a shed of blood, then you are going to be penalized. You're going to be punished. Okay. And your punishment will be death. And all your property will be seized or confiscated by the state. Give me my money and let me go, said Shylock. I have it ready, said, here it is, said Bassanio. Shylock was going to take the money when Portia again stopped him, saying, "Tarry, Jew, I have yet another hold upon you. By the laws of Venice, your wealth is forfeited in the state for having conspired against the life of one of its citizens, and your life lies at the mercy of the Duke. Therefore, down on your knees and ask him to pardon you." Now the Duke then said to Shylock, "There you may see the difference of our Christian spirit. I pardoned you your life before you asked it. Half your wealth belongs to Antonio, the other half comes to the state." So now when Shylock was stumped, so when he asked for his capital amount, Portia refused. He said, "You cannot. There's a case against you. Directly or indirectly, you were trying to cause harm to a Venetian, and that now you have to be. You will be sentenced to die, and only the Duke has the power to pardon you." So the Duke has already pardoned Shylock and says, "Before you could ask for mercy, I have already forgiven you. Now on the 3rd, you will have your class test on the Merchant of Venice. Not 3rd, sorry, on the 2nd of March. Thank you."